originally.
Okay. So we are live. It is Thursday, February 29th, leap day in Senate Economic Development, Housing, and General Affairs. Our last subject of the day is S246, the basic needs budget and livable wage. We are anticipating the auditor and Damien at some point.
Yes, is the auditor here? He has, I sent him the news and links.
Okay. Okay. And Damien's gonna come in first.
Yes, I just emailed him.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I was in a rush to go live for the auditor. There he is. Okay. Good morning, Auditor Hoffer. Good morning. We appreciate your patience, this hurry up and wait that we've been doing this morning. So happy to jump right in. I will let you know that I put an additional proposal on the table for consideration that we're drafting, that we track the many of the employees and wage earners that we pay through the state budget and how far away their wages are from our livable wage calculation biannually. We're obviously hearing that we as the state don't pay enough for people to meet a livable wage, and we should be potentially leading the way on that. So we're looking at an amendment there. If you have thoughts to add about that, how we might craft it so that we're, really getting at the populations in our designated agencies, our home care workers, et cetera. Happy to hear your thoughts on all of the above.
Well, thank you for inviting me. Senator Clarkson knows that I participated in the process. Just shorthand, based on your comments, I support and approve your suggested amendment. I might go further because years ago, when I used to do this work, one of the groups that was definitely below the livable wage at that time and was fairly substantial, it may have changed since then, were para-educators. And that also is technically a state-funded, process.
Right.
So you might want to add that. It's up to you. But I certainly support your interest in and willingness to talk about state employees who may not earn a livable wage. That's great. Thank you.
Hi, Doug.
As for the process, I thought it was well done. I had talked about this with people involved, Ellen Kaler and others, for years, and I thought Pat did a good job. Senator Clarkson and colleagues. I support all the recommendations. Two in particular, I think, are very important. One is the shift from an average of urban and rural for livable wage to more directly telling employers what JFO finds specifically for urban and rural. Second, the addition of a single person's livable wage who shares housing and isn't assumed to be part of a couple living in a one-bedroom apartment, married or otherwise. I didn't think that was realistic. I think this change is much better. Other than that, I'm with you all the way.
Great.
I love it when we're rowing in the same boat in the same direction.
If there's enough
playing
water,
golf.
yeah.
Yeah, right. I need a golf metaphor that works the same as a good rowing one. And that's your job to find it.
Yeah, I'll get back to you.
Great, and I think you were walking in when he said he supported the idea of
tracking, which is a good one. And I have to say, Doug was very present for our work during the course of this task force, and I really appreciated that because he and Ellen really are the pillars of this work, and I continue to be grateful for their vision on this all those many years ago. So thank you.
Thank you. Madam Chair, just a thought about your amendment. Quantifying the number of state employees that currently earn less than a livable wage is a start. And I presume you would also quantify the dollar amount of that gap. But if you can, and I think you can, because it can be done confidentially by JFO on your behalf, it might also be a good idea, if you can get the data, and it's certainly available, to find out the extent to which those state employees are beneficiaries of public assistance. Because to say that, it will cost X or some portion of X to raise their wage, if you choose to do that or go down that road, there should be a savings on the other side.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I
Yeah,
have
it's appreciated.
supported
Yeah.
raising our minimum wage, because if we're trying to reduce general assistance and reduce dependence on public assistance, we have to have people standing on their own 2 feet financially.
It's a great suggestion.
So I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you think of any more great suggestions, we're gonna workshop this language with Damien from Ledge Council today, and we're gonna wait until the week after town meeting to hold the final vote and make sure this language is, narrow enough that it's feasible to gather, but like you said, has specific principles that help us actually make policy changes. Senator Cummings.
If you're going to look at para educators as some kind of state employees, because well, state doesn't, the ed funds schools, we might want to look at the mental health agencies.
Oh, yeah.
And all
The
those
designated.
designated
Yeah.
agents. are part of
designated
it.
agencies.
Yeah.
We got what, $7 million, maybe 7, 8 years ago.
Yeah, when Tim did that big push.
To raise the wages to $11 an
Right.
hour,
Right.
working for less than that, but that was 7 years ago.
Yeah, I think I was anticipating including the designated agencies, however we frame it, absolutely.
Then that would be my ask for Doug, because we're just trying to cover the agencies of the state that use state money that we delegate our work to, like the designated agencies, and we're just trying to remember all of them, and we're hoping Damien will remember them all, but you may remember some of them.
Well, the DAs is a tough one. As you know, that's already a pretty big ticket. Bringing everybody up would have a cost, but the analysis of what impacts would be on the other side is part of the conversation. And by the way, one thing, Madam Chair, as you may recall, when we first met many years ago, I think you were talking with UVM, you were president of the student council or something important like that. And that was the beginning of your career. So if you look at the state employees, obviously they're getting what you would characterize as a Cadillac healthcare plan. So it wouldn't be difficult, just as back of the envelope. I wouldn't recommend it for every employee who makes less than livable wage, but Pat could probably push out some numbers that would take account of the fact that they have better healthcare or it's paid differently than what is in the livable wage budget.
Right, that is a discussion we had about 15 or so years ago, was how do you make sure you're calculating good benefits that, some of the.
That's the other thing. Part of this depends on the analytics that you apply to what you learn here, and just the benefit clip, for example, is also part. Just as you mentioned, the minimum wage is something that ought to be taken into account, relative to welfare benefits. You also ought to take into account the benefit cliff, and as you raise it, what adverse effects and obviously what economic effects result.
Well, that's what's so insidious about it, quite honestly. I find that good. So I also had, in addition to the tracking idea that we have of following our own, what we're paying through the state budget, I also have this more radical idea, which I think you might like, which is aligning every 2 years our livable wage with our minimum wage.
But that's a big lift.
So that once we calculate, well, we go through this scientific process of analyzing what it costs to live in Vermont. Why are we then not adopting that as our minimum wage every 2 years?
You got my vote.
I know, I get all this stuff. I have to work on Brock's vote.
You have to work on me.
But it is the most scientific way we have of knowing what
Right,
it costs.
I
to
think
live.
the point of this is we should start with ourselves,
Yeah.
right? We are often the ones who aren't necessarily in the same competitive market,
I don't disagree.
underpaying, those who do work that we think is the most important. So, let's just start with ourselves. So yeah, Mr. Auditor, you're welcome to stay. We're still waiting for Damien, so we might just keep talking amongst ourselves.
I've got one final thought, and then I've got to run and do some other stuff. But this question of the livable wage and the predictable an understandable pushback from employers. Oh my God, I'll have to raise prices. There's always going to be some truth to that, but it's going to vary significantly based on the nature of the product or service provided, the level of labor costs that are built into that particular industry. And I did some work on this in the late 90s. I think it was Job Gap #3 or whatever. So I was curious about that question. And there are some industries like supermarkets, big box stores, who traditionally have fairly low wages. So the question was to me, what would paying everyone in their workforce a livable wage mean for the cost of a loaf of bread? I mean, that's the way I think we should think about this stuff. Because
Yeah.
it's not enough to hear an anecdote from an employer, this is going to kill me. Well, maybe
Right.
it will, maybe it won't. But let's get some data out on the table before we make a decision.
Well, and not just a loaf of bread, but quite honestly, if we're trying to equate it with reducing public assistance by raising independence, then that will have a direct impact on taxes. So the loaf of bread may or may not be affected, but their tax burden may.
Oh, are you promising to lower taxes, Senator? I'm sorry.
I would love to if people could stand on their own financial 2 feet.
I couldn't agree
You know,
more. I'm kidding, of course, because if you reduce the burden, there's still all those other things that we haven't been able to do yet because we
Oh,
don't have
that's
enough money.
That's true. We're drowning in need. It is true.
We are.
We need
Okay.
our.
Well,
we have
anyway,
big hearts.
I look forward to your amendments, and I will let you know if I have any more thoughts.
Thanks so much, Mr. Auditor. We
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Doug. Thank you for your help.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other general conversation? We are expecting Damien any minute.
No, this is good. And I got given a surprise almond croissant by Martine Kulik.
How lovely.
I know, but it's like this giant delicious thing. I don't even know.
Well,
how
we
to start
can
it.
help you eat it.
So this is exciting. I think this is great. And I think Damien can help us hone who would benefit.
Right.
We then, I think, sadly, probably would need. Oh, we're just gonna do a study of it. We're just gonna get impact on what it would cost for next year.
For however, whenever we do the livable wage calculation, I do think it probably then needs a stop in GovOps would be my guess, if just the opportunity to weigh in, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that would be nice. I think we'd appreciate that.
Yeah, so you can communicate that to your committee,
And I've
do people,
communicated back
Yeah.
about the just cause piece, because we have it in the
Right.
Essex Town Charter.
okay,
So as you know, we've had it in Winooski's,
Yeah.
Burlington's, Montpelier's,
Mhm.
and one or two others, and
Mhm.
we have said no, because if we wanna do it statewide, we finally have our landlord tenant look, and I just don't know what we want to say now to Essex, is like, wait until we do this landlord tenant work, or
Mm.
do we, anyway, that's the
okay, okay.
conversation.
Do people have
Let's take.
thoughts on, well, if we keep going and just
Yeah.
make sure we're on the same page, it's probably end early.
Is Damien coming?
Yes, let me see.
But I did want to ask, how do people feel about paraeducators and touching all of the funds, not just the general fund? So do we want to track this for the ed fund as well?
You can track it.
Right.
I want to get rid of as many paraeducators as possible. We have more paraeducators, more adults per child, per student than any other, no. Yes, than any other state in the country. Way.
So
Right.
are we throwing well, that's a bigger conversation, which is an
Yes.
education conversation.
Right,
Yes.
it is, and it's a related conversation in that often when you increase wages, you reduce your workforce. That's another sort of economic
Or you
factor.
increase your property taxes. The schools have
Right.
shown
Right,
no incentive to cut. this.
right, yeah.
Uh,
So, I mean, that when we talk about raising the minimum wage, people say that just means I'll be laying people off, et cetera.
Well,
I-
maybe they.
But it doesn't actually correspond.
But right
Right.
now. They can't lay people off because they can't get.
That's right, yes.
We have,
But you'd like us to include the education fund.
you can include whatever you want.
Yeah.
I think if we just track it, it doesn't
Yeah.
mean we have to do anything about it.
Well,
It means we need to know about it.
right, and I think these questions are gonna come back from JFO as well.
I think you may find we're gonna give block grants to schools for paraeducators.
We may end up giving block grants to school period and say, this is the budget you have to work with.
Well, that, we may come to that.
We may cover that.
Yes, I think
There just simply isn't enough money to do everything that
Mhm.
may be good to do and we may like to do, but there would have to be smart choices made.
yeah, and sadly, we're the ones who have to make.
I actually, as an aside, and then if we don't dig in soon, we might just end, honestly, because we're not under a huge time crunch.
Okay, well,
We might just end the committee because we're not under a huge time crunch today.
Can we just go off live until Damien joins us? Is that possible? Cause there's,
Yeah, I suppose, yeah, I mean,
Going
but then we'd be finishing, and I just wanted to
oh, okay,
ask,
I don't want.
what, the only thing I wanna say two things. Ask one thing, say another thing. Can we hear from the program that we gave lots of money for training home building workers?
the CT
Yeah,
15
are we waiting until workforce development to do that, or?
We can, and we can also see if there was testimony. I'll ask, if they got testimony upstairs and who gave it.
Cause I was thinking about that today, like, that was a program you gave
Millions.
significant amount of money, and I wanna make
15
sure we're getting more homes.
15 million over
Yeah.
a period of time, and I've forgotten how many
Right,
years.
right.
But it's,
workforce development, I think we looked at what the bill ways of involving the house at this point.
Yeah.
I have not.
I'm
Yeah.
counting on Senator Clark to
It's-
do that, do you wanna give an,
I
you can
just-
give an update like the week of financial crossover or whatever?
yeah, it really primarily addresses, the recommendations from our special oversight committee on workforce expansion and development, which you and I voted on, came out of this committee 2.5 years ago, or in 21, I think.
Right.
Or maybe in 22, I think. And it was in 22, and 5 of us are on that committee. We've been working on it for 1.5 years, and these are the recommendations, and it's on, as you may recall, the coordination of statewide of workforce, so that right now we have state agency coordination, and we have all the nonprofits doing all their, and non-state agencies doing workforce development. This would be coordinating and creating an office that coordinates the entire
Well,
thing.
presumably there's other workforce stuff that
Wow.
we may have in mind as well.
And that
Yeah.
I don't know what additional workforce they're adding to that, but that's the primary piece of the bill, is the SOCWAD recommendations.
You know, this is the film stuff, and
Mhm.
so on,
Yeah.
that came as a result of the task force, and I've been talking to Stephanie Rome as to whether they were doing the house.
Are they doing it in the?
No, she
Okay.
drafted, but I have the same bill introduced here in the Senate, I
Okay.
figure we would deal with it.
Do you wanna set aside time for that, I just call it the week of financial crossover, but like after we're done with our
You
bill?
wanna deal with that bill as separately as opposed to as an amendment?
No, we could start hearing it
All right, that's
and
fine.
then add it to the other
Yeah,
bill.
I can do an introduction to it as well.
Great,
And then
okay.
there's other pieces, there's a new group formed that wants to take on the
Mhm.
notion of, in fact, creating the database.
Yeah.
And so
And
I
I
can
know-
give a quick overview.
Great, and we can add the SAG-AFTRA
Yeah,
witnesses.
I don't know what the bill number,
SAG-AFTRA.
there's a bill under my name
Yeah.
under the film industry.
Great. Tomorrow, I am not here. I don't know how much trouble you can get in an hour and a half before the community assembly.
We are gonna have such a good conversation about veggie.
Great conversation about veggie. You have lots of businesses coming in, or at least a few, so jealous.
So we have, so what we're looking at is getting rid of the sunset on veggie and a loan forgiveness program that Joan is proposing for us. And we're hearing from a whole number of businesses and
It looks like two.
Well, and Joe.
Right.
So we're hearing from Joe, we're hearing from the new executive director of Veggie, and one of our economic development partner, our
That, yeah,
and from Little Lake Champlain,
right.
and from
And
Sean Lawson and Tate Krasner. So it should be an
Mhm.
interesting conversation
and Senator Harrison is at the Pepsi meeting.
right now.
Right.
I'm in those.
So I think we know generally what direction we're trying to head with the basic needs budget. I can I sent Damon an email just to say I don't wanna blindside you. Is this something you can like be thinking about?
Oh, good, did
You
you
can
do that
follow.
yesterday? Yeah, I'm happy.
I did it like an hour ago because
Okay.
like, I really don't want you to come in and we're like, actually, so
He's not here.
I
would
think we
suggest-
can finish, and I'm empowering you to care. Oh, we were about to go off live, but we'll just do this part on live.
Okay, I'm
we
sorry
got
about the
that
delay. I've been triple scheduled this
I
morning.
think
so-
we delayed other ledge council, so it is coming back to us. Okay. They should be fairly quick. Because you may have seen my email, and I think the committee as a whole is willing to go in this direction of trying to create a specifically tailored amendment that biannually, that's a new change, I said annually, but biannually when the livable wage calculation is done.
Yeah, in coordination.
Tracks state funded positions and gives us a sense of the difference between their wage and the livable wage.
Okay.
And we've had some other suggestions from,
So a separate report that comes in at the same time as the basic needs budget that
That's
says,
basically while they're doing that they would also do this, that they would track what the state is paying in state wages. And through our designated agencies, so where state dollars are also going into our designated agencies and the ed fund. The para educators, that we're looking at what we're paying and not paying. And as Doug Hopper asked, quantifying the number of state employees who earn less than the livable wage. Thank you.
okay,
he said something about,
Way
trying to
there.
get a sense of
This isn't me.
how many are then eligible for public assistance.
that's,
Might be too big of an undertaking.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
you probably wanna hear from JFO on this.
Well, right,
So
so,
Joyce
so,
has
yeah.
done this work in the past, and can tell you about the workload.
Yes. So we talked to JFO first, and
Okay.
Pat was very, understand what you're saying, need to go back and workshop this and see. I think what we'd like to, and so you can limit our scope, JFO can limit our scope. But we, I put him in the witness chair first to say, if you think you can't accomplish anything close to this, we're done having a conversation. But we'd like to draft something up that you think is feasible from a legislative perspective, and then JFO will be able to comment on its actual feasibility.
So we'd be looking at state employees, and then,
Temporary and full time.
okay, state employees, both temporary and permanent.
And what else do we call the in the corral? There's another name.
Limited,
Yes, limited service, thank you.
Limited service and permanent. And then, we also wanna look at wages paid to like employees of DAs, SAs and other programs
Yes.
funded by
Yeah.
the state.
yeah. I know you're holding back like your face of how much work this is gonna be. I just worry that if we do the basic needs budget, and we don't tie it to how much we're paying people, So maybe we ultimately ask for it every 4 years or something like that, but
Well, if we're not
we're willing to
understanding,
take feedback.
yeah, we need to understand what we as employers are doing. Which is very important.
So,
SAs are not state's attorneys.
no, maybe I'm thinking of the wrong acronym here, but designated agencies and special, SSAs.
SSAs, right,
Right.
SSAs, DAs, and ed fund, I mean,
No, I think we should leave the ed.
okay, leave the ed fund.
Yeah,
I mean,
Have
this-
no
so-
control.
Yeah, and that might be really difficult to get a fair calculation of that.
Yeah, to be clear, when we did the minimum wage study committee, I remember we had a significant challenge with getting wage information from school districts because they're also,
So let's not
Yeah,
like raise
and those wages
JFO's
will
blood pressure.
vary from district to
Yeah,
district based on their contracts.
Right,
So it's
Okay.
not one statewide wage.
so we're leaving out that.
Yeah, I think the biggest question for you from a like policy standpoint is does JFO even have the resources to do this? It's a significant amount of time and work to put this together. I'll
Yes.
put together language.
The
that will
basic-
Work on it
Yes,
with
yeah,
Patrick.
yeah.
Are you looking for this for the week after we get
Yes.
back? Okay, good.
So
We're not.
Sure how we get it
totally.
ready by
So
tomorrow.
part of our challenge in the basic needs
Yeah.
budget task force was, in fact, addressing the workload that this puts, that even the basic needs budget puts out JFO. Really
Right.
tried to simplify and make it easier for them.
Right, we are very thinly staffed as a state.
We are.
So
I
having
will-
worked
yeah.
in a state that is well staffed,
Right.
our staffing levels are like
Super
below, well below.
below functional in some cases right now,
Yeah, so it's just,
right now. we are.
I,
just flagging that.
yes, I mean.
I'm not allowed to advocate,
We're
but
not gonna get too
it's,
wedded to this. And I will talk to the chair of appropriations because I think she wants to start getting at this information. These are the folks she often brings up as being concerned about in the budget. So I think it's a longer conversation and just whatever you communicate, we completely are taking JFO's lead on what we need to do to curtail them in a way that works for their current staffing and what we might need to do to advocate for additional staffing. We're not unsympathetic to that.
okay. Great, well, I will get to work on that and
Thank
we
you.
will have this for you when you get back.
Thanks so much. Happy town meeting, everybody. And, well, you all be here tomorrow.
I was gonna say, you take off, but we're here.
Yes, have a good, work session tomorrow, a good joint assembly. And, thank you, Damien, for working on this and a few other things. Is there anything you wanna ask or share with us about the other bills you're working on while you're here?
At this point, not at the moment. I will continue working with Senator
Okay.
Harrison on the right to charge.
Yeah,
If there are any updates on that, please feel free to just let me know.
are you at liberty to say if the concerns you've gotten from DHCD are like a yes or no to the bill or details that they want to see?
I think some of the concerns are about the burden that this would place on. And I don't want to speak for them, but my
Mhm.
understanding is it's burden that it would place on their housing partners.
Okay,
And concerns that their the costs associated and some of what Angela Zykowski was highlighting
Yep,
yesterday.
okay,
Could make it so that it is very difficult.
Yeah.
Or if not impossible for their partners to support.
okay.
Um,
When they say partners, do they mean like VHCD and VHK or?
I don't know,
Okay,
I think she needs her members.
yeah,
but yeah, I know
well, I'm
they're,
finding about Chris Cochran, so,
yeah, I know they're flat out on the Act 250
right,
and
okay,
other, and housing pieces
Mhm.
right now, and so they were,
that's why they haven't
um,
communicated directly with us.
they conveyed some concerns, but they also said they weren't sure that they were able to get anyone into the seat right away.
Okay.
to
So if,
Testify.
we'll just treat it like they have similar concerns to the landlords right now and that those are
Yeah.
fair concerns that we're going to address and they can communicate to us directly over town meeting, right?
Yeah, let me just see if there's anything I missed here. Yeah, so they're worried about, they're worried also about backlash against renters who request this.
Okay,
And then, it causing issues with the relationship with the landlord.
okay,
And yeah, and they're also concerned about like what happens with the successive tenants and they're again concerned that their housing partners would be worried about issues with the charging equipment in the future and successive tenants
okay,
not being
yeah,
be sorted out, and it's hard for me to characterize whether this is, we don't know what we don't
right,
know.
right, exactly, yeah.
Or whether this is, we're really concerned that this is a potential deal breaker because of the language in there that basically puts the next tenant on the hook
Mhm.
or damage, et cetera, to the charging equipment. And how that's going to.
So
play
we
out
can,
down the
yeah,
road.
and we can work on that. If anyone communicates with them, and I'll try, they should, if they're too busy, they should be sending these housing partners that they're concerned about to speak for themselves, I think. It sounds like a lot of it is, I mean, DHCD isn't in charge of any of these relationships. So I think we're trying to hear directly from the stakeholders, so they haven't emailed me directly. Maybe Magali, if you could email Chris Cochran and say,
I know that, Ron McCook, I believe.
Okay.
Yes.
My email about who's been reaching out to you.
okay,
Yeah, Bronwyn has been the point person for
Okay.
this year.
so if you could tell
He
her
or
we're
she
happy to
is-
schedule
She is,
any housing partners that they
She's
feel
also the
concerned on
DHCD.
behalf of.
because we don't see her here.
But we understand a lot of their other concerns that are addressed. Yes. Okay.
And Angela, my guess is in the process of reaching out to her constituency. So we'll hear from Angela when she has a full response.
Okay.
And I think one of the things there too, just to keep in mind is, there's like the liability pieces with insurance and so forth.
Mhm.
There are the questions about who gets the work done and what sort of flexibility is there for landlords. As to like whether they have to do it or they can require the tenant to do it.
Yeah.
And then, there was one other piece in there. That's jumped out at me, as an issue.
There's plenty of
Um,
pieces, I think.
But
Yeah.
yeah, that there are a couple of pieces there, and then with the HOAs.
Right.
You saw the letter they submitted.
Oh, no, I didn't.
So
Did you mind
they're
Okay.
good reading for you guys over town
Yes,
meeting
it was
week.
on- Okay.
There's the
guys
community,
Oh, we were, okay.
yeah,
I
Community
just
Interest
found it.
Association, so it's
Okay.
their
Okay.
trade association.
And they're not happy with the,
They have concerns that it doesn't provide enough flexibility for HOAs
Okay.
and community or common interest communities
yeah, okay.
to structure
Okay.
to structure things, so like
Yeah.
to develop their own solutions.
The
But
bill
you know
might
what?
be too prescriptive. It
Yeah,
just
and they
might.
also have that opportunity now. If it's a homeowners association, they can do whatever they want to design and they are already probably doing it.
Damien's
because-
just the messenger. I would say
Don't
you
you think
know,
they're already doing that?
what I'm hanging on to is that a utility said this could help them market directly to tenants and help with subsidies that they otherwise are ineligible for. If we weigh that against the bill being overly prescriptive and cumbersome and concerning, we may not come out with a bill. That's all I'll say. I wonder if the bill is just too prescriptive in certain areas and we just need touch points to really make sure the onus is on the tenant. But there are things that alarm people that we can either remove or just create like a much lower threshold for something.
Yeah, it may be worth looking at, so to date, this bill is based on, I think, Colorado and California, and that's where we
Right,
looked.
yeah.
But there are a number of other states that have similar provisions, but they're limited to just, I think in general, they're focused more on condominiums
Okay.
and common interest communities than they are on renters,
Mm-hmm.
but also looking at them, so like Florida has one
Okay.
and so forth. So there are definitely some states in there that you don't associate with really prescriptive
Yeah, that's true.
regulations,
That's
so it
true.
may be worth
Right.
looking at them. To
And-
see what their
yeah.
example is, and I can pull that over break.
That would be great. Maybe if there could be some coordination about pulling language and getting a witness from a couple states, like a Colorado or a.
Yeah,
Something or other.
the advocates for the bill might know good witnesses
Yeah.
on that end, but I can pull the language.
Okay, why don't you pull the language? Could you ask our advocates if they can recommend a witness or two from states that have passed this? That would be great. I think we are done. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, everybody. Done some good work. I think it's okay, we're not taking votes on some things.
No, and we're lucky enough to be in good shape in terms
Yeah.
of crossover.
Oh,
But that's it.
the other thing I wanna say on live is, I think I had put out a possible vote on the labor amendment in the hopes of getting more people to come forward and testify. I think that was taken differently by some of the business community and they felt kind of constrained. So that's on me. But I wanted to say now to anyone listening and to all of you that we would be happy to hear from any groups that want to raise concerns about the labor amendment the week we return.
Oh, yes.
And we're hearing from a constitutional scholar. They, someone, I don't know, like they were worried about as much time that they might have. It might still be 15, 20 minutes. But we'd set aside a couple hours for, that discussion and see who wants to come forward and.
I think it wind up, getting information about who would like to do it probably over the holiday.
Yeah,
week.
right, I just wanted to
So we
say it
try
all.
to Schedule at the
Exactly.
beginning of.
Exactly,
The week
Yeah.
following.
Yeah.
I know there are organizations, I believe, who do that.
right. So Senator Brock will help a little bit with that. Maybe you could talk to Magali to make sure she has a good list of people to reach out to.
And I have availability tomorrow, if you still want to workshop language around questions for on the right to work language at the end of the amendment.
Yeah.
So, yeah, unfortunately today I'm basically the whole book from start to
Right,
finish.
it's either that or we certainly talk by phone,
Yeah, I'll be in Wednesday next week. I'm traveling for the rest of the week.
I hope you get some
So,
rest.
Yeah, or going to places where they don't have cell service.
Good. We're hearing a lot about how great that is for
Are you
people's
going-
mental health.
Are we going off live?